Welcome to the Zac Show, Sermon on the Mount, Part 3. And I have a regular water bottle today, not a jar of water, just a normal, average Joe water bottle. You get the point. Roll the credits.
My name is Zac, and this is my show. You know what else? I'm at my home. In my basement, you know it, recording on the phone, and I think it's just about the time for us to dive right in. Let's go. Welcome to the Zac Show. Wow.
Do you ever get to like the end of the day and then you kind of realize that you didn't drink enough water? Because that's where I'm at right now. But anyway, that's not what we're talking about today. We are talking about the Sermon on the Mount, Part 3, specifically verses Matthew chapter 5, verses 17 through 20. Talking a lot about the law and Jesus coming to fulfill the law. We're going to read through the chunk and then we will dive into it and we'll see. We'll see how long the episode takes. I feel like I always say it's going to be like 5 minutes episode, 10-minute episode, and then boom, 30 minutes. 30 minutes go by. It's because I ramble. I'm a rambler. That's just what I do sometimes, is I just keep on talking, probably when I shouldn't. But verses 17 through 20, go ahead and crack open those Bibles, open up those phones. I highly recommend YouVersion Bible app and Bible Gateway also. You know, I don't have any kind of sponsorships because I get like 10 viewers, if I'm lucky, a week. But anyway, those are two resources. I actually pay for the Bible Gateway. I think I've said this before. I pay for the Bible Gateway subscription, and it's pretty great on the web browser. On the phone, it's not so great. A lot of times I can't get it to work on the phone. But on the web browser, I think it's pretty good. It's like $50 for the year. You know, or it's super cheap per month too if you just wanted to give it a little test run. But the YouVersion Bible app is fantastic as well. You know, have lots and lots of Bible studies on there. Bible Gateway has more, I would say, resources. Like there's an atlas that I'm looking at right here. We got a Bible dictionary, the Matthew Henry commentary, all sorts of just resources just sitting right here. So anyway, Matthew chapter 5, verses 17 through 20. Let's go ahead and dive in. Here's what it says. Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. For truly I tell you, until heaven and earth disappear, not the smallest letter, not the least stroke of a pen will by any means disappear from the law until everything is accomplished. Therefore, anyone who sets aside one of the least of these commands and teaches others accordingly will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever practices and teaches these commands will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you that unless your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, you will certainly not enter the kingdom of heaven. So once again, in case this is the first episode you've ever listened to or ever watched or anything like that, Jesus is talking here, giving this big sermon, known as the Sermon on the Mount. It covers about 3 chapters in the book of Matthew. This is where we're at. So this is saying that Jesus did not come to get rid of the law. He didn't come to establish a new law. He didn't come to overthrow the government or anything like that, but rather he came to fulfill the law. Now, one example of that is that we don't need to sacrifice animals anymore because Jesus was the perfect sacrifice. So now we just need to accept the sacrifice and we're saved. You know, that's kind of what John 3:16 is talking about when he says, whoever believes in me, whoever is accepting what he did. I always love to play devil's advocate with John 3:16 because it says, you know, for God so loved the world that he gave his only son, that whoever believes in him will not perish, but have everlasting life. And you get that word believes in there, that can be tricky. This is where kind of boiling things down to the Greek or the original language of the Bible comes in handy. So the word believes in there doesn't mean acknowledging the existence of God, because even the devil himself can acknowledge the existence of God. That word right there, the word believes, is talking about entrusting your life over to Christ, choosing to follow that path, to accept what he did for us on the cross. So anyway, back to what we're talking about here, the fulfillment of the law and how Jesus is the fulfillment of the law. This is not saying or I'm sorry, this is saying that the law does not save us. I just totally nailed the microphone. The law does not save us. Jesus saves us. I think so often we can get so worried about doing all the things, all the Christian things, we feel like we got to say all the right things and do all the right things and be perfect all the time. We forget that it's through grace and it's through mercy. Through grace and through mercy in Jesus that we are saved in the first place. And if we're saved through grace and we're saved through mercy from Jesus, then we need to extend grace and mercy to others as well, which I'm a big fan of. You ever see, there's some Christians out there, I'm not saying that they don't have Jesus in their life, but they will 100% look down on someone. So it's like they're admitting that they've accepted the mercy and grace for themselves, but then they'll look at somebody else who's maybe struggling with sin in their life and just be like, that person needs to pull it together. Like they're not willing to extend grace and mercy to those people. If someone walks into your church or walks, I don't know, I always think in terms of your church because, I work at a church, so someone comes in the middle of the workday, it's probably going to look different for me than if it looks different for you if you're a doctor or whatever. But if someone comes in and is just a bit rough around the edges, don't judge them. Don't kick them out. Guide them. Show them healthy boundaries. Love those people. And just remember that it is through Jesus that we are saved and not the law. The law, and there's like a whole chunk of Romans dedicated to this, but the law is simply there to remind us of our sin and to keep us accountable. That's kind of it. That's the purpose of the law, to let us and everyone else know that there is sin in your life. So instead of judging that person, we need to come alongside them and help them work through those things. People just need help sometimes. They need someone who's going to come in their life and not just give up on them all the time. So that's ultimately what I think we need to do. But when you follow Jesus and you have him at the center of your life, obeying the law just becomes more and more natural. And I don't know why, but every time I say something like that, like it becomes more and more natural. I think of a scene from SpongeBob SquarePants. Can I quote that here? I think this is my show. What am I talking about? We're going to quote SpongeBob. But there's a scene in SpongeBob SquarePants where I think Squidward's was SpongeBob and he's like, quick, act natural. And SpongeBob jumps on the ground and pulls up some, seaweed and starts mooing like a cow. 'Cause I guess if cows lived underwater, they would eat seaweed and not grass. So his idea of acting natural was acting like something out of nature, I guess. But yeah, when Jesus is the center of your life, obeying the law or following the law or whatever you want to say, it becomes more and more natural. It's the same thing with good works, right? The more you have Jesus at the center of your life, the more good works, they just come out of you. It's not like it's something that you have to try to do all the time. And this is known as, in the Christian world, or the Christianese of it, is the process of sanctification. And it is just the process of you chasing Jesus and becoming more like him. Now, you'll never be Jesus, all right? Make no mistake. But the more you pray for people, the more you read the Bible, the more characteristics of Christ you will find yourself picking up. And if you're wondering what those characteristics are, I've mentioned them a few times on this podcast, but they are the fruits of the Spirit, which is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, and self-control. And if you're thinking to yourself, wow, Zach, you finally memorized all the fruits of the Spirit. I didn't. I have a teleprompter, actually. So my camera is on the other side of like a screen, and I just read those off to you. So love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, and self-control. The Bible says, against these things there is no law. There's no law against these things. You're not going to go to jail for having self-control. You go to jail for not having self-control. Right? You don't go to jail for loving someone. You go to jail for being hateful or not respecting that person or whatever, But ultimately, to have all these things come out, it may take some time. You're not going to be perfect right out the gate, right? If you struggle with anger, it's going to take time for you to work on the self-control. It's going to take moments where you have opportunities to get angry and you choose to not be angry instead. It's going to take moments like that. So it may take some time, but you will see these things coming out in you the more that you chase Jesus. Like I said, it's just going to become a natural part of your life. Sorry, I keep drinking water. I'm going to drink this entire water bottle by the time we're done. I mean, it's just a little fella. For those of you who are listening and not watching, it's only 16.9 fluid ounces or 1.05 pints. PT, pints, 500 milliliters, something like that. My kid eats 4 ounces of milk for a meal. This is 16.9. So we're doing pretty good. Anyway, a good sign of following Jesus is not to be perfect. That's not what it is. But rather, are you listening and working on the conviction that God puts on your life? It's not about how many commandments you can obey versus another person, because there's people out there who can memorize all the fruits of the Spirit, unlike myself. They can memorize all the commandments. They can memorize every verse in the Bible, but they miss the relationship part of Jesus. So it's not just simply, can you obey the commandments, but is it easy? I think it becomes easy when Jesus is at the center of your life. The next section, we're going to dive a little bit more into some of the commandments like murder, adultery, divorce, things like that. Going through oaths, let your yes be yes, your no be no. We're going to hit a lot of that in the next section. And really just kind of living with Jesus, living with that relationship that you have in him. What you got to remember with this relationship with Jesus, it's about you and it's about Jesus. The rest is going to overflow from your life. If the biggest thing that you do is you chase Jesus, if you truly love God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your soul, with all your strength, if you truly do that, these things will just come out of you. They will just flow out of you. What's that chunk in Romans that talks about faith without works is dead? I think a lot of people in the Christian faith, they get it mixed up. They get it backwards. We get it backwards, I should say, I guess. I don't want to be up here being all hypocritical because I get it backwards all the time myself. But to say that, look at all the good stuff we do, therefore I have a relationship with Jesus, that's backwards. It should be, I have a relationship with Jesus, therefore all this good stuff that I do comes out. I think the more that you try to do good works just on your own merit, the more exhausted you will become because you're doing it for the wrong reasons. You're doing it to boast yourself. You're doing it for the thank you or whatever. You're doing it for kind of like a pridefulness inside of you. But if you're simply doing it because it's the right thing to do, if you're doing it because Christ is living inside of you and all you want is for that person to maybe get a little tiny glimpse of Jesus because of the actions that you did, then you're doing it for the right reasons. And that is what's going to keep you going. If you live for the thank you, you're going to burn out. You just will. The more that you live for yourself, the quicker you'll burn out. The more that you live for God, that you get into these things, not for the thank you, that you work on the fruit of the Spirit. It's not so that people can notice it in you. I mean, they will, but if that's the sole reason you do it for, you're doing it for the wrong reasons. It's going to become hard. But if you're doing it because you're chasing Jesus, then you're doing it right. And look, I always tell parents, now that I am a parent, I've been a parent for a little bit, I feel like I'm still a rookie in the parent game, you know? My oldest is about to be 4. Now I got a second kid now, if you didn't know. About a month and a half old. So anyway, what I tell parents all the time is that if you love your kids and you try, love them as best as you can love them, and you try your best, you just try your best, that's it, and you're doing it right. You're doing parenting right, man. Are you going to make the right call all the time when it comes to your kids? No. Are you going to make mistakes? Absolutely you will. I always think that kids should learn 2 big things from you as a parent, from myself. They should learn what to do. They should also learn what not to do. They're going to see every single side of you, man. My kids are going to see every single side of me. They're going to see the good stuff and they're going to see the not so good stuff. So I pray and I hope that they can take the good stuff and continue it on, and they can weed out the bad stuff. And I think the same thing can apply to our relationship with Jesus. You know, maybe you don't have kids and that analogy didn't make so much sense to you. But I think if you just love God and you just try, you're going to be all right. When I was in college, my first few years, I took 6.5 years to get a bachelor's degree. Fun Zac fact. A little bit longer than the average Joe. Most people do it in 4. I did it in 6.5. But what I struggled with early on was not that it was hard to get to do the classes. I mean, the work's hard, don't get me wrong, but it was turning in assignments. It was having the discipline to go to class all the time. Those are the things that I struggled with. And when I didn't turn in assignments, when I didn't go to class, I didn't get the material, I didn't do well on the tests, and I failed a lot of classes. And what I eventually learned through the help of my wife, she wasn't my wife in college, we were dating, but through the help of my wife was my work ethic. And I eventually learned by the time I graduated that if I simply just tried as hard as I possibly could in that class, I would at least get a C. Like I said, I'm not the smartest dude on the face of the planet or anything like that, but what I figured out is if I turn in every single assignment, if I don't miss a single class, if I do all of these things, I will, in fact, pass that class. So community college, I struggled, and when I got to Liberty, I did a lot better. And had that mindset. My last semester, I had the goal of making the dean's list, and I got so close. In order to make the dean's list, I forget the GPA that you had to have. It had to be all A's and like a couple B's in your classes. And I needed one more A. Like I had all A's and B's that semester. I did so well my last semester. I had all A's and B's, and I needed one more B to turn into an A. And the semester was over. All the exams were done. All the work was turned in. I didn't miss classes. I didn't miss assignments. You know, I tried. I tried as hard as I could. And so I remember going through it and looking and just thinking, is there anything else that I could do? Is there one tiny little thing left that I could do? And I said to myself, I'm going to email the GA in this class. And I was literally 1 point away from an A. Like 1 point, like one test question that I got wrong. If I had gotten it right, I would have had an A in that class. So 1 point away. And they always tell you, sometimes they give you a grace period, like a little grace buffer, I should say, between a B and an A. They'll be like, hey, instead of a, if a 95 is an A and a 94 is a B, they're like, we'll say like a 94 is an A. So a lot of times if they do that, they say don't ask for any grace in there because we're already giving you grace. So I can't remember if this class did that or not, but I was 1 point away from the threshold of getting an A. And so I just emailed my GA and I just said, hey, I know there's probably nothing you can do. I've turned in every assignment. I've taken every test. I was just wondering if there's anything else that I can do. And I told him my goal. I was like, my goal, I've never made the dean's list before. My goal is to make the dean's list, and this is my last semester. Is there anything left? And I sent that email, and I was just confident. I was confident, not that he would say yes or that, anything. I was just confident in the idea of I tried as hard as I could. And if this doesn't turn into an A, if nothing else happens, I'm going to hold my head high because I tried as hard as I could. And I'm proud of the grades that I pulled, regardless. And then he emails me back, and he says, hey, Zach, I saw that you didn't miss a single class this semester. I'm going to recommend you for a grade bump. And I was like, what? And the professor honored it. The professor gave me the 1 point grade bump, essentially for perfect attendance. And that B turned into an A. That A landed me on the dean's list, and I met that goal. But that wasn't what I had when I first started community college. So the same thing, if you apply the same principles into your relationship with Jesus, you're not going to start perfect. You're going to stumble. You're going to struggle. You might struggle with several different of those categories. But the more you chase Jesus, the more you love God, and the more you try, the easier those things become, and the more natural they become too. So anyway, that's been the Zac Show. A little bit shorter today than normal. We're, according to this timer here on my screen, we're about 20 minutes. We're about at the 20-minute mark. So look at us. Look at us just jogging right through it. I didn't get an episode out last week. I apologize. I was very tired. Oh man, I was pretty tired. It was Sunday night. I was like, I could maybe do it. I could maybe do it. And I was like, no, I'm just going to get on there and be all scatterbrained and stuff. I'd rather go on there with complete thoughts. I feel like the week before I was scatterbrained. I don't know. If you watch it and you liked it, go give it a like. You can like this video too. But do all the things you're supposed to do for the Zac Show. Like, comment, subscribe, share it. I don't know. Send me a cup of hot cocoa. Whatever the things are you're supposed to. All the platforms call it something different. I upload this to 2 places. One is YouTube and the other is Substack. And I do Substack because it distributes it to all the platforms for me. And it's free. If you ever wanted to start a podcast, I highly recommend going through Substack because it'll distribute it. That's my noise for distributing to all the other platforms like Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all those things. Anyway, my point is all those platforms called following or subscribing, they all call it something different. So follow, subscribe, like, comment, share, do all the things that you're supposed to do to kind of support the channel. Everything we do here is free. I say we is really just me and my iPhone and GarageBand with a microphone. That's how I roll. But all of it's free. I have no intention on charging money for anything like this, at least. But thank you for watching the Zac Show. I have a good time doing these. I hope you do too. I'll see you next time. Peace out. Finish this water bottle.
My name is Zac, and this is my show. You know what else?
I, in fact, finished it. I thought you should know that.
Now I'm at my home. In my basement, you know it, recording on the phone, and I think it's just about the time for us to dive right in. Let's go. Welcome to the Zac Show. Wow.